The main character in this story is an exorcist. He is a specialist in the exorcism of bad spirits, but he was old when the events of the story occurred. He was in his mid-60s. He did not take jobs outside of his city due to his advanced age. His wife didn't let him go very far. As a result, he only takes on the tasks of his own city. The exorcist has 2 daughters, not sons. He wants someone to replace him after he dies. Otherwise, who would support the people? So the exorcist began teaching his nephew. Meanwhile, the exorcist's old friend pays him a visit. This friend has requested a big help from the exorcist. The problem is that a witch has performed witchcraft and sent an entity that can only be seen by his daughter to possess this friend's daughter, make her sick, both mentally and physically, eventually kills her. This entity is unable to access their home property for an unknown reason. However, this entity wanders around the house, sometimes staring at the house from the trees around the house, trying to find a way to possess the girl. This exorcist's friend heard the problem from his own daughter and attempts to seek assistance from exorcists in his area. However, none of them are capable of resolving the problem permanently. In this scenario, he recalled an old friend and goes to meet him, asking for assistance in saving his daughter. Even though the exorcist does not accept cases outside of his city, he was unable to avoid his friend's case. The friend told the exorcist everything he knew about the case, and the exorcist agreed to assist his friend's daughter. The exorcist was eager to visit his friend the following day. He came with his nephew on this visit, so if the exorcist forgets his mantras, his nephew can remember them for him. The exorcist's wife and 2 daughters objected to the visit, but the exorcist convinced them to be calm, because his nephew was always with him. The exorcist and his nephew set out for his friend's place. After paying a visit to a friend's residence, the exorcist and his nephew examine the area, then gather all of the items needed for the exorcism. The friend invited them to lunch after they finish preparing for the exorcism. While having lunch, the exorcist asks more about the case. When the exorcist realized what was going on, he realized that the spirit had been sent by a very skilled witch. In the scene, when the exorcist asks for the suspect, the friend responds that one individual used to chase after the girl. This person attempted to form a relationship, but the girl rejected him. The girl kindly asks that the guy stop pursuing her, but he didn't stop there. As a result, the girl's cousins beat him and threatened him to stop chasing her. The person suddenly stopped chasing her, and she didn't see him again. This line of events leads the exorcist's friend to suspect the man who used to chase his daughter. The exorcist then comforts and calms his friend, and the exorcist told him that he would not abandon them until this matter was settled. The major reason for accompanying the nephew on this visit is because if the exorcist forgets something, the nephew can point it out. But the exorcist has overlooked something crucial. That thing evaded the nephew as well. There is only one powerful mantra that can reverse an entity's impact. It's a long mantra, but the results are instant. Perhaps the exorcist needs to repeat the chant a few times. It is decided by the entity's power. Who knows? The exorcist begins the exorcism by chanting a powerful mantra. After chanting for several hours, the exorcist understood the entity was still present and very powerful. The exorcist has 2 options in this case. Either permanently limit the thing to its present behavior region, or return the entity to the witch who sent it here in the first place. There is no way to stop the effect or make the entity goes away. The exorcist chooses the second choice and continues repeating the mantra. Before leaving his own home, the exorcist advised his wife and 2 daughters not to open the door for anyone who comes to the house at night, not even for himself. When he returns at night, he knocks on the back door in a certain pattern, so that his wife and daughters can be certain it is him. Other than that, do not open the door to anyone who asks to open it. Meanwhile, after several hours of repeating the mantra, the exorcist is able to return the entity to the witch who summoned it. Everything has returned to normal. Everyone is happy. The exorcism was a success. The payment was offered to the exorcist by the friend, but he politely declined because he is one of his friends. The exorcist and his nephew then prepare to return home, and the friend invites them to stay for dinner. The exorcist and his nephew stayed for dinner and then went home. After a few hours on the bus to their cities, they both walk on their separate roads. The nephew greets the exorcist and expresses gratitude for the opportunity to participate in a true experience. The exorcist also thanked him for his help and left on his own way. After a few moments, the nephew returns to ask that the exorcist visit his home to get something that belongs to him, but that he has forgotten. The exorcist noticed his nephew's disappointed expression, and he runs for the exorcist's house, leaving him behind. The exorcist is confused by his nephew's unexpected behavioral change. Nonetheless, the exorcist starts to pursue him to find out why. However, the nephew did not stop to explain why. After visiting the exorcist's home, the nephew requests that he quickly check on the girls. After knocking according to his secret knock pattern, the exorcist's wife opens the back door. The exorcist then requests to his wife check on the girls. The wife screamed loudly and then began crying. The exorcist and his nephew run to find the cause of the screams, after noticing that both of the girls are unresponsive and covered in blood vomit. The younger daughter has already died, while the elder daughter is still unconscious. The exorcist knew what had happened to their beloved daughters, and that it was the result of the entity being expelled. After chanting a few mantras, the exorcist was able to bring the eldest daughter back to consciousness. She is weak and has no knowledge of what happened to her sister. The exorcist's wife didn't hear anything either. The entity that tried to kill his friend's daughter was expelled by the exorcist. He is certain of it. He couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. The nephew then raised his voice. He revealed that he had forgotten to perform a step that the exorcist had asked him to perform. So the nephew is the one responsible for the fatal attack on the exorcist's daughters, and the nephew is willing to accept any punishment the exorcist has to deliver. But punishing anyone is pointless. What happened is already in the past. Nothing can restore the exorcist's younger daughter's life. The exorcist asks the nephew what went wrong. He explained what he had forgotten. The entity usually expects something in exchange for agreeing to do what the exorcist requests, typically a meat-based dish. In the exorcist's friend's house, the exorcist instructed the nephew to prepare a meal and place it outside the house, so the entity can consume the dish. The meal was made by the nephew, but he failed to keep it outside. If you recall, at the beginning of the story, I mentioned that for some reason, this entity is unable to enter the house or the property area in order to possess the girl. That's why that girl is still alive. However, the entity has access to other locations and will receive what the exorcist promised, a meat-based dish. So the entity went to the exorcist's home and got what it was promised.